Hi, this video is part of Latin for Beginners, a self-study course which uses a traditional method of classical Latin instruction and emphasizes reading skills. The course is based on a public domain textbook, Latin for Beginners by Benjamin L. Duge. The text may be found at gutenberg.org and a link is in the video description. There is also an online practice tool as well as additional resources and materials for the course at selfstudyclassics.com. This video covers Lesson 8 of the text. Videos on Lessons 1 through 7 may be found in the Latin for Beginners YouTube playlist or in the videos section at selfstudyclassics.com. These videos are meant to reinforce the concepts presented in the text with examples, not to replace the text itself, so you'll get the most out of the video by reading over the lesson before watching. Lesson 8, like Lesson 7, is a kind of review. We don't learn any new forms or constructs, just some new vocabulary. So our practice will be examples of previously learned forms and constructs which incorporates new vocabulary. Before I get into the examples, I wanted to address an aspect of the text that I find confusing. This is a great text, but no text is perfect, and this one might give you the impression that the genitive and the dative each have only one use. So the first point I want to make is that Latin is very flexible about the use of these cases. Unlike the ablative and accusative, these cases are never used with prepositions. The genitive we have generally translated as possessive, but it is not just possessive. I like to characterize the genitive as the of relation, since it is very often the case that the genitive is the proper construction in places where English uses of, including places that are not possessive, such as a shield of iron. That's not a possessive sense, but one could use the genitive there. In a similar way, the dative is not just for indirect objects. One often finds it in places where the English for or to might be used. That is, when they are not used in their physical senses. So in English, one might say, sugar is bad for kids. Kids is not an indirect object there, but the Latin might translate it with the dative. Classicists often like to classify all the different uses of the dative and genitive with terms like genitive of material and dative of interest. I haven't found these classifications to be all that useful. You should be alright if you use the rule of thumb that the genitive acts more or less like of, and the dative acts more or less like for or to in their non-physical senses. Okay, let's get started with examples. The first one is Agricola filiabus viam latam parat. We start with the first word. Agricola is the nominative singular subject of the sentence and means the farmer. Filiabus is a noun in the dative plural. Note that this is an irregular form, meaning it doesn't look like a regular first declension dative plural, which should end in is. Instead, it ends in abus. This irregular form applies to two words, dea and filia. Keeping in mind what we said earlier about the flexibility of the dative, we're going to translate this as for his daughters. We can update that later if it doesn't really fit. We supply the possessive pronoun his because Latin does not require it when it is implied by the context. Viam is a noun in the accusative singular form. It is the direct object in this sentence. We translate it as a road. Latam is an adjective. Its accusative singular form suggests it is expressing an attribute of viam. Its meaning is wide. Parat is a verb with a singular form. It agrees with Agricola, the subject. It means prepares. So that gives us the farmer for his daughters a road wide prepares. Or the farmer prepares a wide road for his daughters. Awesome. Let's try another. Aquae altae deabus malis gratae sunt. On to the first word. Aquae is a noun. There are multiple readings for the form, but we're going to assume that the word is the subject, and this is the nominative plural form. The meaning would be waters. Altae is an adjective with a form that agrees with aquae, so it looks like an attributive adjective. It means deep. Deabus is a noun, and another irregular dative plural form. We'll do as we did earlier and translate it as a prepositional phrase with for, since a prepositional phrase with for or to will capture most of the senses of the dative. Thus we will translate it as for the goddesses. Malis is an adjective. At first it might not look like it agrees with deabus, but when we recall that deabus is an irregular form, we realize that both words are in the dative plural, and that malis is therefore likely to be attributive with deabus. Its meaning is wicked. Gratai is an adjective. It agrees with aqua, but it is unlikely to be attributive since it is so far away. Let's assume it's a predicate adjective. Its meaning is pleasing. Sunt is the copula we expected when we saw something that looked like a predicate adjective. It links aqua with gratai. It's the plural form, so it means are. This brings us to waters deep for the goddesses wicked, pleasing are. This captures the general idea pretty well, but in English it's more idiomatic to say pleasing to the goddesses than pleasing for the goddesses. So we'll switch that out and rearrange the word order to get deep waters are pleasing to the wicked goddesses. Next sentence. Ankila noa ad canam galinae dominam vocat. Let's start with the first word. Ankila is a noun in the nominative singular and is thus likely to be the subject. Its meaning is the maidservant. Noa is an adjective that agrees with Ankila. We'll read it as attributive and translate it as new. Ad is a preposition that means to. Canam is accusative singular and the object of ad. We translate it as a dinner. Galinae is the genitive singular form. We'll follow the rule of thumb laid out earlier and translate it with a prepositional phrase using of, which will capture almost all the senses of the genitive. If we feel the need to put a label on this construction, we can call it the genitive of material, but that really has no impact on the process of translation. Its meaning, then, is of chicken. Dominam is accusative singular in form, and it's the direct object. It means the lady. Vocat is a verb that agrees with the singular subject Ankila. It means calls. Altogether, we have the maidservant knew to a dinner of chicken the lady calls. In English word order, that's the new maidservant calls the lady to a dinner of chicken. Okay, one more exercise. And, as usual, our last one is English to Latin. The long trumpet announces the victory of the famous ladies to the girl. Let's start at the beginning. Passing over the, which has no Latin equivalent, we focus on long. It is an adjective which precedes the noun it modifies. It will be some form of the Latin word longa, but we will have to look at the word it modifies to figure out which form. Trumpet is the subject of the sentence. We'll put it in the nominative singular. The Latin word is tuba. We now know that longa must be in the nominative singular as well, so we can leave it as longa. Announces is a verb that must agree with the singular subject, trumpet. We will translate it as nuntiat. The victory is the direct object of announces. The Latin for victory is victoria, but because it's the direct object, its form should be accusative singular, so we say victoriam. Our rules of thumb tell us that of will normally be translated with a form instead of a word, and the has no Latin equivalent, so we'll move right along to famous. It's an adjective expressing an attribute of the word it precedes. The base word meaning famous is clara. Let's look at the word it modifies to determine its form. Ladies is part of the prepositional phrase of the ladies. English prepositional phrases led by of are almost always translated with the genitive case. In this case, the phrase is expressing the lady's possession of the victory. The Latin for lady is, of course, domina, so the form we need here is dominarum, the genitive plural. This means its attributive adjective, a form of clara, should also be in the genitive plural, so we end up with clararum. Finally, we have the phrase to the girl. It's a prepositional phrase with to, but not one implying physical motion. Also, we have a Latin verb here, nuntiat, that accommodates an indirect object. These should be clues that the dative case is what we need here. The Latin for girl is puella, so putting that in the dative singular, we have puellae. In total, then, we have longa tuba nuntiat, victoriam clararum dominarum puellae. As the text notes, the preferred Latin word order, barring any special emphasis, is subject, indirect object, direct object, verb. So using that framework, we get tuba longa puellae, victoriam dominarum clararum nuntiat. That takes care of the material for Lesson 8. As always, the best way to achieve mastery of these concepts is to work a lot of exercises, and you can find plenty over at selfstudyclassics.com. Head to the practice section and choose Lesson 8. Once you feel confident about the Lesson 8 material, keep an eye out for the video on Lesson 9 of Latin for Beginners, which introduces a new declension. Thanks for watching.